First off, if you are growing more than one type of tobacco on the same growing site, it should be noted that any tobacco varieties will cross-pollinate rather easily. So in order to maintain genetic integrity of future varieties, you'll need to separate your crops by at least 1 mile or allow only one type of variety to go to seed. But we'll cover topping off your plants in a separate video. For now, we have our 500 count Havana tobacco seeds, and they come in a fresh seal packet that will protect your seeds from humidity and moisture during shipment. So the first thing we want to do is get a white piece of paper and snip off a corner of this fresh seal packet. And what we'll do is we'll spread these seeds out onto this piece of paper, and that's actually a lot more than we'll need for our 6-celled starter tray. I've also prepared a seedling starter tray, not this one, but a different one that already has some growing medium in it. And what we use is a Miracle-Gro moisture control potting soil, which is a specific brand of Miracle-Gro. And we've had the most success with Miracle-Gro soil. It seems to have the perfect amount of peat, compost, perlite, and fertilizer. And as advertised, it really does hold the perfect amount of moisture for starting vegetable or tobacco seeds. On the other hand, some people do use these peat pots that kind of rise when you add water. But really this is just peat, and it doesn't have enough nutrients available, or it doesn't have any fertilizer at all beyond just peat. And it's kind of a sterile medium, and you can use it, but we've had the most success with our Miracle-Gro potting soil. So there's and my recommendation is to use this. And later on, when you get to the repotting stage, these really squeeze out easy, and you have these nice little root plugs that you can stick into a larger pot. So here we are with our seeds and our potting soil ready. So what I like to do is tap my finger down really lightly, and we're going to just spread about 8 to 10 seeds per tray and try to aim for the very middle. I don't know if you can catch that detail, but I'm really scattering it right on the surface. We're not going to bury these seeds to any depth into the soil. It's just going to ride right on the top. So I'm going to spray them lightly with some just plain old regular water. Try not to this will help to embed the seeds into the soil a little, but we won't try to spray it so hard where the seeds start moving and going off to the corners of the seed tray again. Obviously, commercial tobacco growers have their own methods, but they're growing on the large scale, where it's not affordable to do this for every one of their plants. But for our case, since we're growing at home, we can give the seeds the attentions that it really needs and to optimize its growth. And with these techniques that are explained in the instruction booklet, you should be able to see some good germination within at least 3 to 4 days. So what we're going to do now is simulate ground cover. Since the seeds actually are not covered in ground, we're going to simulate ground cover by blocking out sunlight by using some aluminum foil. Oh, I forgot to mention that this seed tray, is just a. This is actually a mushroom tray that we got from the grocery store, but I've also noticed that tofu trays or any type of other cheap plastic trays that come with other food items at your grocery store will work for these trays. All you need is a reservoir, and I filled it up with a little bit of water. What it's doing is it's providing water through the bottom of the seed trays through these holes, and it'll promote root growth because the moisture is actually coming from the bottom. But to germinate it, we're going to cover it with aluminum foil to block sunlight out, and we're going to put this in a warm area. We have a water heater that's actually in a closet. I like to put this on top of the water heater and close the door, and then it maintains a good 75 degrees in there, which is perfect for germination for seeds. If you don't have a water heater closet, I would just put it right on the water heater. There's a little bit of radiant heat that comes from the top of the water heater that will warm up the tray and essentially create like a little mini greenhouse for this. We already have some germinated seeds that I did sow about 3.5 days ago. So we're going to take a peek at this and see how well they've done. Oh yes, and as you can see, there's one really big one, right? Oh, there's two little big ones. And each of these have little sproutlings of tobacco seeds. And actually, this is the perfect stage to bring it out and start exposing your tray to light. Let me disconnect the camera here from its tripod. Okay, so if the camera will focus, you can see that they do germinate at different rates. It really depends on the microclimate of each cell. I know it's like really technical at that point. I mean, you know, in general, all these cells are getting the same amount of heat and whatnot, but you know, there might be a little bit more heat on this corner where these prompted these guys to grow a little more, and maybe they're hardier seeds than the rest. But you can also see in the other trays, there's very small sproutlings. They almost look like little mushrooms, but no, those are actually tobacco stalks that are beginning to come out. And I can see that this camera is not focusing very well. But you know that when you get to this stage, when you see a little bit of the cotyledons on the top, the first true leaves, that these are ready. And you'll also see some of the other seeds that have like a little bit of fuzziness around them. That's actually the root hairs trying to grow out. That pretty much covers sowing. Your seeds are sowed, and basically take them out of their darkness. Stick a name tag on them. Put them in the window, and that would be it for the next week or so. Remember, keep your seeds watered. Keep your soil moist. And water from the bottom of the tray. If you have like a little watering can, water through this gap here. And we'll see you in about a week and a half from today. What we're going to do today is we're going to thin out the tray. And as you can see, all the sproutlings are growing really nicely. Actually, almost every single one of these seeds that we put in here has actually sprouted and is turning into little seedlings. But the eventual goal of what we want to do here is only have one plant per cell. Obviously right now, if these all grew to seedling size, they're actually just little sproutlings right now. But once they grow to seedling size, this is going to be much too crowded. What we're going to do today is we're going to thin out these plant seeds or the seedlings, and what I'm going to do is just going to take these tweezers and pluck out the ones that to me look like the weakest of the bunch, or ones that are obviously out on the side of the seedling tray. I'm going to want to just take those out first, because eventually I want the plant to be right in the middle. So I'm just going to pick ones that either look kind of sideways, look crooked, leaving the healthiest ones in the cell. I'll probably leave about 5 seedlings in here, just to give me some good options for next time. We can't assume that the strongest looking seedling in each cell right now is going to be the strongest one in say 2 weeks. So let's just thin out very gingerly without hurting the plants that you want to leave in here. So we're just plucking these little seedlings out. If you want to, you can actually, if you have another seedling tray, what you can do is take some of these seedlings with the root intact and actually stick it into another tray. But for our uses, I'm just gonna discard the weaker ones. I should come up with some tobacco thinning music out there. I don't know if anyone's good with a banjo or something like that. That'd be awesome. Maybe I should have Surf Monkey Coconut himself, jam on the ukulele for us. These seedling trays are just about where I want them now. Roughly 5 to 6 seedlings per tray. Nothing's overcrowding each other. I'm gonna pinch out that little guy. So to me, that's looking pretty good. I got this tray to about the point where I want it to be, about 5 to 6 seedlings per cell. And what we're going to do is just continue to let these little buggers grow. We're going to just put them in front of the windowsill again and give them full light, a lot of water, and we'll see you, say, in another couple weeks. Thanks for watching. I know a lot of you growers out there are probably thinking that time is going by too slow, but here we are, bam! I think this is at about our 4-week stage, so a month from now, or from when we sowed them. Now we got our little seedlings. So this is about the stage when we want to start thinking about transplanting these seedlings into a bigger container. At this stage, you'll notice that the tobacco has been growing and flourishing every day, and has been making significant advances in their growth. At about this stage, they're going to start to appear to start slowing down. So what's happening is the tobacco is beginning to put its energy into its root development, and it's really pushing its taproots down. It's going to start spreading out beneath the soil, and then once it's satisfied with that, then the top of the plant's going to start taking off like a weed once again. And that will occur maybe 3 weeks from now. So, hang tight, guys. It's a long process, but the end results are worth it. So, not to mention, it's really fun watching these little tiny seeds grow into tremendously large monsters at the end of their life. So, here we go. Nisqually Havana. We're going to take these out of their little seed cells. So you'll know when your tobaccos are just about ready for transplanting when you see a few little taproots coming out from the bottom of the seed trays. It's a nice indication that, yes, they are beginning to outgrow their little seed cells here. Again, these are easy to remove seed plugs, so we have that to our advantage. But to make it even easier, because these tobaccos are so delicate and can snap easily at the stalk, I'm going to actually cut these cells into individual little plugs just to give me the added ease of unplugging them, so to speak. Let me cut that a little better. So while these trays are reusable for many seasons, with our tobacco, we've waited so long and patiently for them. Is this not worth damaging our little precious seedling here? If we're doing things like herbs or a little bit hardier vegetables, I would reuse the entire seed 6-pack. But for this, I really want to make sure I do this correctly the first time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make an indentation in our pre-moistened soil. Again, we're using Miracle-Gro moisture control soil. Later on, when we put it in our 5-gallon pot, that's when I start to use compost potting soil, or whatever is local, whatever's organic in your area. The plants would definitely appreciate it. So I'm going to make a I'm going to make a indentation into the soil about roughly the size of this plug here. I'm just going to use my fingers for that. And that's about right. I'm going to carefully finagle our root ball out, and that's a technical term. And you see the roots here. You don't need to break up any root ball because these roots are very delicate at the moment. Again, this pre-moistened soil around it is going to be really basically there's not going to be any noticeable transition from the root between this soil and that soil. So it will spread out correctly. So I just push it in like that, and you know what? That's all there is to it. We're done. You see that the tobacco kind of drooped over just a little. What I do to counteract that is I take a little barbecue bamboo skewer and just give it a little support where it needs it. And that would be it. Here we are with our newly transplanted tobacco seedling, complete with barbecue skewer. We're going to leave it like this for another 3 weeks. Remember to water daily. It has enough fertilizer in there to sustain its growth for the next 3 weeks. And we'll see you at the next stage. Hang in there, Havana tobacco. And as you can see, this plant has grown to a considerable size, and it's time for replanting. This is about the 2-month mark, and to be honest, this plant is actually probably overgrown for this pot. And it would have been better if it was transplanted about, say, a week and a half ago, but I wanted to intentionally leave it in here so that I can show you. We've already repotted the other plants into the display balcony that we have here, and we'll go ahead and show you that afterwards. We got a question from a YouTuber, HB Surfer, asking if we only water the plants from the bottom. And yes, that's true for the beginning stages of the plant. During the when it's in the seedling starter trays, we water it from the bottom, as well as these nursery pots. And I'll kind of give you a demonstration how we do that. We just take this watering can and fill the bottom cup up. And what happens is, by capillary action, is the water will get sucked down from the bottom of the pot through the drainage holes and up into the tobacco plant. For later stages, when we're in the 5-gallon pot, we just water from the top. So what we're going to do now is pinch off a little bit of these yellow leaves at the very bottom, just before transplanting, so that when the plant is transplanted into the bigger pot, the plant can concentrate its energy on the bigger and better leaves up here, and also concentrate on putting its energy into new top growth, rather than expending energy on these bottom ones. So all you have to do for these is just kind of pinch them off like that. You just pick them off, kind of like pieces of celery. Here's the very first leaves that formed. Take those out. I'm also going to take this one out too. Just pinch it and pull it, and that's it. So what I'm going to do is show you the tobacco update on the balcony, and we'll see these in the big pots. So here we are on the upper deck of our urban balcony, and as you can see, this Havana tobacco plant is doing just fine. What I did is, it's a little bit windy out here, so I supported this with 3 shish kebab skewers, kind of in a tripod formation. It kind of supports the plant on all 3 sides, and that's actually really sufficient for holding it straight, and then it allows the plant room to grow up without being restrained by any twist ties or anything. Here we have another one. It looks like it's been a little ravaged by some wind, so again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull these bottom leaves out so that it doesn't waste its time trying to grow these bottom ones out more. You can see it's a little dented there and dented there. Eventually what's going to happen is, when these grow bigger, these bottom leaves will turn yellow first, and that's actually when you know when to harvest it. So what I'm going to do is, we'll follow this video up again with another video on harvesting the leaves, and hopefully these plants will still be around. It is a windy day today. Without further delay, let's show you the tobacco and how they've done this summer. Bam! Isn't that a glorious sight here? Havana tobacco, full grown. I'm just kidding, guys. This is not the full grown tobacco. This is Havana, but it's not full grown. I'll let you in on this one in a little bit. Here is our full grown and in full glory display Havana tobaccos on our balcony up here. I like to call this our sky lab. We're growing some other experiments here. This is a aquarium of moss and stuff, but for today's purposes, we're looking at our Havana tobacco. And aren't they big? It's hard to tell in this video, but this is actually above my head. I stand about 6 feet tall, so this is roughly a 7-foot plant, but minus this pot, which on its own stands about 18 feet. So roughly this is a 6-foot plant if you count the seed pods. So sorry about the background noise if you hear any, and there seems to be some kind of storm coming through, so it's a little windier than it is usually up here. But we can see our full-grown tobacco plants, and I want to show you what we do with the bottom leaves. And when you know that your plants are ready for harvest, leaf harvest anyway, when the bottom leaves are turning yellow. And here you can see a lot of yellow bottom leaves. This one I've already took the liberty of taking off some of the bottom leaves because they're just getting a little crummy. There's holes forming in it from rubbing against the pot there. You can see a little bit of damage from just the bottom skewers. And this is an interesting hole. This one actually came from when the plant was younger and the skewers went through the leaf and just kind of grown out from there. This isn't actually done by a insect or anything, and there's very few insects that actually will attack a tobacco plant because of its sticky leaves and sticky texture. But when the plant is ready for leaf harvesting, you can tell by the yellower color than the upper leaves. And these leaves will readily snap off. They'll sound like a piece of celery, but it'll be far more easier to break off than cracking a piece of celery. So I'm going to put all my fingers down and I'm just going to press down really quickly. And there you go. You might want to hold it with your thumb, but there went that leaf. I'm just going to take off a whole bunch of these bottom leaves here. It also makes it easier to water the plant overall when you expose the entire pot there. And this one has a little bit of damage anyway, so I'm just going to pull that one off as well. And here, ooh, that one wasn't quite ready to be pulled off, but yeah, I pulled it off anyway. So for scale, here's the leaf and here's my hand on it. So it's a pretty big leaf. I think my hand is roughly, I have no idea how long my hand is, but it's 1, 2, 3 hands long. So it's a pretty big, substantial leaf. Here's our first fall harvest. Fantastic. We actually grow our seed tobaccos we contract with independent farmers up in eastern Washington, so this isn't the ideal conditions for these. It's good to note that on our display balcony here, we only have Havana tobaccos growing. And that's because these tobacco plants are kind of regionally distinct, but they're actually the same species of plant. And if you have different, regional distinctions of plants, like say a Havana and a Virginia growing next to it, they will actually crossbreed really easily. All it takes is one bee to go from that plant to this plant. Both of these are Havana, so we're not in danger of that. But what will happen is these plants will be fine, but the next generation, if you're going to reuse the seeds, will be some kind of hybrid, if not some kind of mystery tobacco, if you have multiple types of tobacco growing on the same site. We actually contract with some independent eastern Washington growers. We have several different sites for we only have 3 varieties because of this. Each of the sites are separated by at least a mile between each farmland, and we're only taking up a small portion of each farm, so it's not a big production at all, but it's our way of maintaining our genetic integrity here. I saved this plant. I've only let 2 of these the big Havanas go to full growth. We're not actually trying to start a farm here, but this is just for our display purposes, and I like to just kind of show my friends how big these plants can get. But I wanted to show you what happens with our with a Havana plant that hasn't been transplanted. As you can see here, its growth has been incredibly stunted. It's probably good, well, volume wise it's like a good 3% as big as this plant. It's not even as tall as one leaf of that full grown Havana. I want to illustrate the point of what happens when you don't transplant a tobacco plant and give it all the needs that it has to get for its growth. Both of these seeds were sown at the exact same time, except this one I just didn't transplant. I kept watering it just like the full-grown plant, but this one was limited in the amount of room that it got to spread its roots out, and you can clearly see how yellow the leaves are. But even more obvious than that, you can see how tiny that plant is compared to the bigger plant. So every so often I get a email message about my plant hasn't grown very much over the past couple months, but what you do want to make sure you do is allow the plant to get a bigger pot. It's just as important as watering and fertilizing. The plant will absolutely not grow if its roots are bound, and to an extent I even think sometimes these 5-gallon pots are a little too small, where this plant could have grown even further with a bigger root ball. And that's kind of seen in our eastern Washington sites. Some of the plants are absolutely gigantic. So last thing, I just wanted to see exactly what this root ball looks like. Here's our 3.5-inch pots that we sell on our eBay site. This should, see if I can do a one-handed, yeah, and it does slide off pretty easily. There we go. And you know what, this actually isn't very root bound at all. I thought it'd be far worse looking than this. You could actually still break this up and plant this had we had a longer growing season here. Yeah, that's really interesting to me. So it's actually not that it's root bound so much. It is stunted in that it can't spread out its roots, but it's actually just the plant just stopped growing. Really interesting compared to the larger Havana plants again. So, well, I just want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Right, so color curing, here's the setup. We got our pile of Havana leaves here, we got a roll of string, a knife to cut the string with, and some black zip ties. This year I'm going to color code the zip ties to correspond with the leaf type. So for our Havana leaves we're going to use a black zip tie. For our Virginia leaves we're going to use a white zip tie, and for the Connecticut leaves we're going to use a green zip tie. Air curing is a very simple process. All we're doing is we're just going to help nature along and turn these green leaves into the nice golden brown that we're used to when we see leaves in the fall. What we're going to do is just provide adequate ventilation for the leaves so that they don't mold on each other. If there's too much moisture, they're going to start to form mold on each other and on the leaves. So we're hanging them to prevent that from happening, just allowing all the air to just circulate around these leaves while they're drying. And then again, we want to have it in a semi-humid environment. We don't want it too dry, say like in the middle of the Nevada desert in your garage. Chances are if you let it dry in too dry of an environment, the leaf will dry green, which is again undesirable. We want it to dry at a brown leaf color, which is why it's called color curing. But again, very simple process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put two leaves, the bottom stalk together, because it just prevents the leaf from touching more than if you put the leaf tops together. You see how they kind of stick together that way. So I'm going to put the two stalks down, take one zip tie, get a nice length of string for this, because we're actually going to hang these from my trellis. And again, underneath the trellis there's a there's a wisteria growing on top of the trellis, and I just feel that the wisteria provides a little bit of shelter when it's drizzling. Obviously if it's raining these leaves might get wet, but that's just the chance I'm taking. And then again during the dry days, the wisteria on top of the trellis provides a little bit more humidity for the air circulating around the leaves so that it doesn't dry too quickly. So I'm just going to cut that string. I'm going to tie the string first around this zip tie here. A simple box knot will do. Double it up. Okay, and then I'm just going to simply zip it right around the stalks of this tobacco plant. Make it tight, but not so tight that you're going to destroy and cut right through the leaf. And that is tight and secure enough. So there's many ways to hang your leaf. I think in Central America they actually take a needle with a string, they punch it through all these stalks, and they have like a huge rod. That's probably the cheapest way. I don't really trust that method of securing. I feel like the leaf will kind of break off, because when this dries, this really shrinks down. And then when the leaf does shrink and get brown, what this zip tie allows you to do is just you can always tighten it even more when the leaf, the area of the leaf just kind of starts to shrivel up. So that's all there is to it. We're going to keep doing this process with the rest of these leaves that we got, and then we're going to go to the hanging trellis. Alright, so here we are with our tobacco bounty at the top of the trellis. I just hung these really temporarily. I'm going to hang these individually, but I wanted to show you the leaves that we did last week as a test batch. And most of these leaves are really small. It wasn't worth filming. This is actually some really long Virginia leaves, and you can tell by that white zip tie. So they're coming along really nicely with this air cure. No mold on it, and they are turning golden brown as we speak. Here we go with the zip tie tightening. You can tell that the if I can focus, you can tell that they are losing their area and density. So like this zip tie is really loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tug on that zip tie and make it tighter. I'm trying to see if I can do this with one hand. Hopefully I caught that. I had the camera in my mouth. Then we'll do it again with these. Anyway, I'm just going to zip tie all of these. And I'm going to need both hands for that. Okay, I figured out the one-handed zip tie tightening method, so here we go. It's kind of, you have to, it's one thing why these zip ties are so convenient is that you can just pull them to tighten them. Here's some really small Havanas from last week. And you want to check on your tobaccos weekly, just to tighten these zip ties. Otherwise, they'll slide right on out. As you can tell, this one's just hanging on by a thread. Tight and tight. Okay, so I'm gonna hang these new leaves amongst the older leaves, and we're set for this video. Alright, so we got them hung up there. We're gonna check them weekly now. Again, you saw the leaves that we hung up last week. They color cured pretty quickly. They're not all the way there yet, so probably another week. And then we'll also give you an update on the second batch of Havana leaves that are behind it. If you want to skip ahead and look at the next process, we have an instructable written in text version. I'll put the link below. It'll show you the process of going through a fermentation, in a cheap do-it-yourself way anyway. But for now, thanks for watching and happy growing, everybody. Good curing update. This is week 3 for these hanging tobaccos. Actually, week 3 for this first batch, week 2 for the second batch. You can see on the second batch, they're not all the way completely done air curing yet, due to the color. But the first batch is just about there. And I know a few of these slipped through the zip ties. I just came up here and tightened them. But I know 2 of them were not tight enough, so they kind of fell to the bottom. So they're down there. Kind of put them on some newspaper. So we'll go ahead and check those out. So here are the 2 Virginia leaves that fell to the ground, basically because I didn't tighten the zip tie up there. But as you can see, they are perfectly air cured. This is the nice light golden brown that you want for Virginia leaves. Havanas will cure a little darker than this. But as you can tell, they are nice and supple. You don't want them so dry where they disintegrate when you crush them. And they went through their proper humidity levels and went through their natural progression to this state, which is a brownish leaf ready to go through the fermentation chamber so that we can leach out the rest of the impurities in these leaves. For the moment, you can just put them in a cardboard box and have them wait for the other leaves that are coming on out. These are done in batches, so there's really no rush in this. Again, fermentation stabilizes the leaf so that you can hold them for the long haul, but for now they'll last for roughly 6 months just in a cardboard box. You don't have to worry about them too much. I was asked a question by a YouTuber about air curing either indoors or outdoors. That really depends on your environment. Ideally, you want to hang them outdoors. If you have at least a little bit of humidity in your area, outdoors is the best place for it. Is this the natural environment for any type of growing leaf is outdoors, and usually leaves will brown even in the lowest amount of humidity. But if you say you live in the Nevada desert or maybe in Arizona, it might be a good idea just to put these in your garage instead of the outdoors, and maybe run a humidifier in there. But for your specific area, you might want to test it. Putting it outdoors might help, especially in fall when humidity levels might be decent, if depending on how dry your climate is. But just test it out. Okay, well, I just wanted this to be a short video, so catch you guys later, and thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the fermentation chamber. But I'm just kind of showing a really quick and dirty, cheap fermenter to use. Okay, now that we got the disclaimer out, what we got for this cheap fermenter is just 4 items, really. All you need is this cooler that I got from Fred Meyer. It was $2.99. What I like about it is that it has a very thin lid that goes along with our lamp fixture here that I got from Home Depot. I believe this was about $5 to $7 from Home Depot a couple years ago. It came with a clamp on this side. Is this a cheap little tweezer clamp, and this actually fits really well inside of the cooler. When you're looking for parts, you might want to start with the lamp first, and then make sure that your reflector dish will indeed fit into the cooler, like so. Beyond that, this lamp actually has a nice little channel here that will fit when we punch this through the lid. it'll actually work like a little clamp on that end too, so it'll hold itself into this lid, which is a concave lid, and it matches the geometry of our reflector dish as well, so it kind of fits and falls right into place that way. The other two items that we have is a light bulb. Here I have a 40 watt light bulb and a thermometer that we're going to put into our fermentation chamber. And for a lot of you who've already seen the Instructable, the first version of this cooler fermenter was a lot more complicated than the one I'm going to do now. I actually drilled some holes on the bottom for some airflow, and drilled some holes on the lid so that air can flow from the bottom and up to let the heat out. But what I noticed with that is that it lets too much heat out. It never achieved a 120 degree temperature, which may have been a good thing. But it also dried out the leaves really fast too. And the first version that I did was I just kind of piled these leaves inside of the cooler and put a wet paper napkin on them, and then another plastic. But these leaves dried out within, say, 20 minutes. So what I determined to be the easiest method of creating this fermenter is that you do absolutely nothing to the bottom. Leave it as is. It'll hold the heat in well. It won't let air escape. This is actually not a very airtight cap, so as you can see, it kind of moves around. So air will be escaping in and out kind of in the cooler. But we just kind of want to capture as much of that heat as possible, because I noticed that nothing, it didn't burn very hot last time anyway, and when I had those holes it just didn't work at all. So all we're going to do to make this tobacco humidor, or fermenter now, is all we're going to do is we're just going to take this part of the light ballast. I took off the reflector dish. I'm going to take this light bulb socket, and I'm simply going to press it through the middle. You don't have to make it too complicated. You might think that you want to use a hand drill and a really large bit, but it's not that hard. I'm just going to estimate the middle of this lid here, and that looks good. And I'm just going to simply push it through. Because hey, we're only talking about a thin piece of styrofoam, and there you go. See, it came right off the top. So I'm going to pull that out, take all the foam out. I'm going to push it through the top, all the way down to that collar there. And I'm just going to simply screw this reflector dish back on. And there you go. Now, was that easy or was that easy? And it's actually holding in very firmly. The light switch is on the outside now, on off. And we're going to just screw in our light bulb back onto the top. Try not to get any fingerprints on there. Okay. There we go, and let's test it. I'm going to plug in this cord. And we got liftoff. So this essentially is our warming element for our tobacco fermenter. Here we got our deep cooler. I'm going to throw in the thermometer in there. And there you go. Instant tobacco fermenter, and it makes a nice night light as well. Alright, so let's go on to part 2. I'm going to start showing you how to wrap up these tobacco leaves and put it into our fermenter and hope for the best. Alright, welcome to part 2. Actually, it's going to be part 8 of the series, right? So I'm going to move this aside. I'm going to actually leave this tobacco fermenter on, only so that during this process, so that I can see what exact temperature we're going to be at, in say about 5 minutes from now. So I'm just going to leave that with the thermometer in there. Thermometer is in there only so that we can gauge, how temperatures are. If you're reaching temperatures of 150, turn it off or get a lower watt light bulb or something. That's a little too hot. Don't want anything to combust spontaneously in there, obviously. So that rag was for the light bulb. Okay, so here we go with our color cured tobacco. This is Virginia again. I have all these color codings, so these are Havanas, Virginia, white zip tie, Havanas with the black, Virginia. This looks like a Virginia. So you can see that the Virginia is a lighter color than the darker Havanas. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of these leaves into the same plastic bag. So what we're going to do for the humidity is we're just going to put these leaves into a bread bag like this and spray some distilled water on them to keep the humidity up. Again, there's so much air movement in the tobacco fermenter that if it's not in a plastic bag, it actually dries up relatively quickly, and I'm talking like 20 minutes, it'll be crispy dry. So the only way to retain that moisture as well as keep it, having it continuously exposed to the warmth is to put it in a light plastic bag just so that it has some kind of membrane to hold all that moisture in. We're trying to simulate the inside of a compost heap. In Central America, when they're done color curing their tobaccos in their curing barn, they actually take them down and throw them into huge compost piles and piles of tobacco, much more than we have in just our little handful here. In the center of these compost heaps, you have the 120 degree temperatures as well as the 75% relative humidity. So what we're trying to do is simulate that conditions so that these leaves react in the same way that they would inside of a tobacco compost heap. They really monitor their temperatures as well, and when it reaches a certain temperature, they take apart the whole heap, shake the leaves to oxygenate it, and then reassemble the compost heap, let it heat up again, and do it for about 4 or 5 cycles. So which is why we're trying to do this with our leaves. We're going to keep it in the 120 degree temperatures, 75% relative humidity, just like those compost heaps, and it needs to maintain that temperature for 6 weeks. Again, the hardest process for any home grower, and to me the biggest reason why this is legal to grow in your own yard. I think if it was any easier than this, where you can just pick a leaf off a plant and start smoking it, it could quite possibly be an illegal substance. But there's so much process involved in this, I think the government probably believes that nobody would do this. Nobody in their right mind would actually go through all this process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut off these zip ties, and I'm going to create what's called a hand of tobacco leaves. A hand is similar to what we did when we tied them up in the first place. Is this a bunch of tobacco leaves tied into one, but it just makes it easier for the fermentation process, and then when you want to oxygenate it, you just kind of shake it out like this. So what I need now is another black zip tie, and I'll be right back. So again, hopefully you have your tobacco fermenter outside of your house, but for the first couple of days you do want to check on your temperatures, check on the heat of the cooler. Like right now I can feel that this cooler doesn't have very much heat at all. I can almost not feel any heat in there. Really, it's very cold to the touch on the outside. But you want to check on this probably like 5 or 6 times a day, just on the first day alone. And also just to make sure that you have enough humidity in your plastic bag here. I'm just going to kind of fold this leaf up so it fits. There's still a little bit of humidity in these leaves themselves, but I'm going to amend it with a spritz. Actually, I'm going to cut the zip tie off. With a spritz of distilled water, and we want to use distilled water because we don't want to introduce any new microbes at this point. We want to treat everything as a sterile substance, even though the leaves themselves are not sterile. But it's a good thing because we want it to go through some biological processes. So I'm just going to twist it, make sure that there's a little bit of air in there so that it has some oxygen to do some aerobic fermentation. And I simply have a clothespin here. You can use a twist tie or even a piece of tape, masking tape. And I'm just going to place it right into our fermenter and put our thermometer right on top. And you know what? This thermometer could actually burst. it's far above 120 degrees. I'm actually going to put it underneath the tobacco so that I see how hot it is under the tobacco. But yeah, obviously we're running a little hot here, but you know, it doesn't feel that warm. It doesn't feel like the cooler was about to combust at all. So there we go. There's our first crop. Basically, tobacco in there, thermometer underneath the leaves. Cover that. Then I'm going to check on this in about 10 minutes, and I'll come back and add that to the end of this video. Alright, so here we are 10 minutes into our fermentation process, and let's give it a check. I can feel that it is pretty warm in there. I can feel the bags themselves are pretty, they're not hot, they're just, you know, kind of warm, and you can see from just the steam or the mist on the inside of those bags that it is kind of warm inside of the bags, and it is beginning to sweat. So you can take a look. Here's the bottom of the leaves. They're going to get a little wet on the bottom, but don't worry, that will resolve itself soon. And want to check on this kind of fast because the temperature is probably dropping, but I think it was probably at the 110 mark. So, you know, and that's underneath the leaf. Obviously on the top of the leaves, on top of the plastic bag is probably much hotter than that. I think we're talking maybe 140 degrees. But again, you do want to check on this every so often, and you want to check it more often when you start the process, just to make sure everything's going well, and obviously nothing's going to combust on you. I'm just going to continue this. 10 minutes into the process, I think we only have about 30,000 more hours on this. It's going to be a long process until we get anything that we can smoke. You know, natural processes take time. What I'll do is I'll try to do little update videos, hopefully weekly, and show you what's going on. But you know, as for tobacco fermenter, this is it. Let me know if you have any questions below. Thanks for watching, guys. Happy growing, happy fermenting, and we'll see you next video. We're going to do some cool little interesting plants coming up. So again, this is an exotic plant channel, so let's try to keep it at that. So thanks again for watching, and Fermentator update number 1. I think I'm going to have to make a new series just on the fermenter, just to keep everything separated. I made 2 improvements to the fermenter already. It's only been about an hour and a half since it's been running, but I came back to check on it. While the foam felt fine, everything felt cool on the bottom. When I went to lift the lid, this black piece got really hot, and I was afraid that if it was that hot, it could potentially melt through the styrofoam and maybe fall into the plastic, come in direct contact with that, and then start some kind of fire that way. So what I did was, number 1, I think that the wattage was a little too high, so I replaced the 40-watt bulb with the 32-watt bulb now. Just keeping everything cooler. I think it'll help. You know, this is under direct radiant heat, and it's in the insulated box, so I think it'll still reach the needed temperatures for that, even with the lower wattage, so long as everything's kind of hermetic in there. The second improvement that I did was I created these cardboard gaskets. I just cut a square and a circle in the middle and fit it around the collar of this light fixture, so that it is sort of like a temperature insulator, temperature separated, so this piece isn't coming in direct contact with the styrofoam, so that you have this insulated piece of cardboard between surfaces. I did it for both sides, so it's on either side, so even if this reflector dish gets hot, it won't be in direct contact with the styrofoam itself. So just a quick update. You know, as for what this is going to become, you know, I don't know, we might modify it some more in the future, or actually we might modify it in the next hour or so, even depending on how well it does. I'm going to check on this probably every half an hour for now, for the first couple hours, see how things are going. I actually am probably going to turn this off for tonight until I'm actually up while it's on for the first, you know, say 5 hours, because even if you don't see a temperature variant within the first 2 hours, 5 hours could be a total different story. You know, things just could get heated up in there, could, you know, have some kind of horsepower building with, and it'll just kind of spontaneously combust. So this thing does make me afraid and nervous about just having it on, so I think you guys should probably have the same precautions. But you know, it worked a couple years ago, so we'll see if we can replicate it. And in case you guys were wondering, this was the clamp that came with the light. So this is what you're looking for, and Oscar's asking for his dinner right now. Oscar the tobacco cat. So we'll check you guys later, and thanks again for watching. In this chamber, I've noticed that if this light is left on continuously, the cooler is so good at insulating that the heat source just keeps building and building in it. And not over just a couple hours, but even over a couple days, it would just get hotter and hotter in here, especially because there's no vent holes on this cooler. So what I did to remedy that problem was I did add this timer here, and what this does is it gives the heat source a bit of a resting period, so it would build up heat for, I believe I have it set for to go off for 15 minutes every half an hour. So the light will be on for 30 minutes and then shut off for 15 minutes and go back on continuously all day long. What that does is it allows the heat to build for 30 minutes and then it cools off for 15, hopefully losing a little bit of temperature, but not a whole lot. And then for the next 30 minutes it'll go back up again and repeat the process. But cumulatively the temperature will still rise, but hopefully only up to a certain point, over a few days. And I found that that is the ideal temperature that we are looking for. Well, this hasn't been on continuously, and again, it takes 6 weeks continuous heat and humidity for the fermentation process to complete itself. But here's what we got. I took out the Virginia leaves just because, for my own reasons. But this is the Havana leaf, and you can see it's actually fermenting pretty well. When you're fermenting your leaves, you will notice that the moisture in there, you have like brown liquid, but that's actually from the leaf itself. And again, you want to aerate the leaves every time you spray it. There we go. I'm going to set the lid right there. These leaves do need to be sprayed again. They are dry. They're kind of hard. And again, if there's no moisture on the leaf, it's going to halt the process. Basically, the biological processes kind of needs that moisture to do its activities. If it's a stone dry leaf, nothing's going to happen. You're just having a warm, dry leaf in there, essentially. So you do want to keep it moist. So I do have a surprise for everyone. I know everyone was anxiously waiting to see the final product. This leaf itself probably has another 4 weeks to go, just based on the amount of time that I stopped the fermentation process, turning this light on and off until I perfected the timing of this particular chamber. And again, I'm not saying that your chamber is going to be exactly the way that this one operates. You do need to monitor your conditions carefully to make sure that it's not a fire hazard. There's a lot of good comments in the old videos. Just kind of scan through the comments. I do try to answer everyone's questions. So there's a lot of good input there. People have their own renditions. They asked about aquariums, terrariums. Even someone mentioned putting in a heating mat and not exposing it to light continuously, which would better simulate the compost heaps. Take a look at those. I haven't tried all of them, but I found this to be the cheapest and most efficient. Just using a light bulb at a cheap fixture there. Okay, but I do have a surprise for everyone. Here are the fermented leaves from 2 years ago. So what happens after this fermentation chamber is that, you waited 6 weeks, on pins and needles to get it through the fermentation process. That will stabilize the leaf, but it's still a good idea to age the leaf in a humidor-like condition. So here we have a humidor simulator, which is a cardboard box. The cardboard kind of retains a little bit of moisture, but you want to keep the leaves aged in a humidor basically for about, I would say a minimum of another 3 months, maybe a year. A lot of times the boutique cigars, the tobacco there are even aged for like 5 to 10 years sometimes. A lot of the high turnover tobacco is probably less than a year. But here we have some 2-year-old Havana that has been just kind of sitting here waiting for us to roll it. So, I know it's a long time coming. I know cigarettes, I haven't figured out the real reason for cigarettes, because it's kind of an inverse proportion to cigars, in that cigarettes are better when they're fresher and there's expiration dates on the cigarette pack, where on the opposite hand, cigars, the more you age them, up to a certain time limit, of course, get better with age. So it's kind of different. It's kind of like looking at beer and wine, and the only thing I can think of is that cigarettes are a high turnover product, and they simulate fermentation through chemical processes where cigars are done through natural processes. I don't quite understand exactly how that works. But anyway, here we have our 2-year-old Havana update, and I was on the fence on whether or not I was going to share this, but there's a comment in one of the YouTube videos by a viewer who asked me to kind of go over the potential downfalls and problems that you would have in the growing process. But throughout the whole life of doing this, trying to get to a smokable product with tobacco, there are problems even with fermentation. So in that time, I mentioned in the previous video that I took out the Virginia leaves for my own reasons, and this is the reason. The time that this cooler was shut off for a week, both bundles were just kind of sitting here in the cold darkness in their little moist bags, and what happened was the Virginia leaves did mold on the edge. And I know that this camera doesn't do good macros, so I'm going to try to hold it out as close but still in focus. But you can see here there's a little green discoloring, and then there's some white mold kind of around the zip tie here. You can recover these leaves by just kind of separating as much of that mold as you can off the leaf, kind of just kind of cutting it off like a piece of moldy bread. You could eat the opposite side of the loaf if you wanted to, and you're really brave, but it's a good idea. To me, I just don't want to smoke any type of mold. I'm just going to throw this whole thing out. But it's a good reason for doing these in small batches. Again, this is only about a quarter of the Virginia leaves that we harvested this year. So I still have 3 more shots with this. That's goes with everything else for home fermented tobaccos. Just do it in small batches, and if you run into any problems, no big loss. You can always try again. Just want to kind of show that it is one thing that can happen with fermentation, but again, you wouldn't necessarily have it just sitting in a cold, dark cooler in the first place. You always want to have that heat source on until it's finished fermenting, and you'd have a truly stable leaf at the end of that. But just want to put it out there, and thanks for watching.
What we got here is a $21 paper shredder from Walmart. It's turned upside down on a trash can and to cut tobacco. So here we go. You'll see the tobacco as it cuts. You can watch. You stop it when it gets to your desired grain. And there you have it, a $21 tobacco cutter. Thanks.